All right. I know you didn't come out here to see me, but some of you did. Cool. All right. President Pines, distinguished faculty, parents, family members, friends, and soon-to-be graduates, let's be blunt about our circumstances. It's 92 degrees outside. We're halfway through a ceremony where the people we're celebrating are sitting in the blazing sun, dressed in black, heat-trapping nylon tents. We're at the back end of a pandemic that took a 2-year bite out of our celebrants' college experience. And you've got a guy who draws stick figures as your keynote speaker. As far as commencements go, this really is off to a rough start. When I woke up this morning, I felt a thrill of excitement at the opportunity to address the largest commencement ceremony in this university's history. It's a responsibility that I don't take lightly. And so, before I even got out of bed, I picked up my phone and said, "Hey Siri, how do you write a commencement speech?" So, it turns out there are several steps, and the first one is to start thinking about themes several months in advance, which actually is really good advice, but if I'm being honest, not that helpful. It seems that most commencement addresses call for a combination of an eager audience, an accomplished adult, and a memorable speech. But a quarter of the graduates seated before me are already wearing AirPods, and I write booger jokes for elementary school kids. So I think we should just agree to muddle through this quickly and get these graduating students one step closer to enjoying a meal at some restaurant on Route 1 with their families. I wanted to take a moment to recognize the summer and winter graduates who didn't get a chance to properly celebrate their achievements last year. I'm so glad you're with us now. But I'll bet when you checked the weather this morning, you thought hard about blowing this one off. The last time I attended a graduation, I was dressed in full doctoral regalia. But it wasn't because I had pursued an advanced degree or was given an honorary doctorate by some random college. I was attending my own undergraduate commencement on this campus in December of '93, and I had borrowed my mother's gown to save money on the rental. So imagine my surprise when I showed up as the only undergraduate wearing big blue stripes on their sleeves. I'm actually a little self-conscious to be up here on stage with so many distinguished faculty members and accomplished guests. The thing is, I struggled while I was here as a student. I had to drop out of the computer science program in my senior year, and I crossed the finish line with a 2-point-something grade point average. Let's hear it. I'm actually hoping my mother can't figure out how to stream this event because I really don't need her knowing about my report card. Even worse, I left the school under shameful circumstances. Just after I graduated, I published a compilation of my comics that ran in the Diamondback. I printed flyers advertising my book on the most obnoxiously neon green paper I could buy at Kinko's. And despite knowing it was against the rules, late one night I taped a flyer to every white pillar on campus. Well, it rained overnight, and the ink from the paper bled, staining each pillar with an 8.5 by 11 neon green rectangle. The next morning, when I discovered the damage I'd caused, I did what seemed like the smart thing to do. I ran. So, I guarantee you, every student graduating today is starting off on better footing than I did when I left here 30 years ago as an unemployable vandal. It was only last fall when I worked up the courage to return to campus, and that was only because I needed to drop off my son at Cumberland Hall to start his freshman year here. But even then, I was keeping an eye out for the campus police. It really is amazing how much this place has changed since I've been here. This stadium is twice as high as it was in the 1990s, and there are new buildings everywhere. Downtown College Park has gotten a serious facelift, and the VU is just a sticky-floored memory. That's an awful lot of change for 30 years. Wait, we're still in the ACC, right? I just lost the crowd. You might get the impression You might get the impression from the text of my introduction that when I graduated, I had a clear-eyed vision of the person I'd one day become. But nothing could be further from the truth. Here's what I've been up to since I graduated. I became a night production manager for the Diamondback, then a graphic designer at a newspaper, then a medical software engineer, then a programmer for an educational website. In 2007, I worked with a talented team of people to create a virtual online world called Poptropica. And later that year, after working on a manuscript for 9 years, I published my first book, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Thank you. And since then, I've worked on feature films and in television, and I've traveled all over the world. It was a twisty path from the moment I graduated from Maryland to this one. And even though I used almost everything I learned along the way, unfortunately, I still haven't figured out how to make use of my criminal justice degree. At least not yet. I don't know what your journey will look like, but whatever your plan is at this moment, it's likely to change. The most successful graduates will be the ones who see change not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. Consider this, when I graduated, the internet wasn't even really a thing. Social media wasn't a dot on the horizon. If you wanted to make a phone call, you had to find a working payphone somewhere and then fish through your pockets for quarters. What will the world look like 30 years from now? If recent history is any guide, the future will be almost unimaginably different. Siri told me that at the 1/3 mark of my commencement address, I needed to get to the messagey part of the speech, and we're in the thick of that now. I'd like to kick this portion off by telling you a story I've never shared before. My travels as a touring author have taken me all over the world. Sometimes I end up visiting countries that aren't especially safe to visit. About 10 years ago, I was headed to a country in which US citizens had recently been targeted in terrorist attacks. To make matters worse, while I was en route, the country I was visiting provoked its much bigger neighbor with an act of war. So on a layover to my destination, I wrote a letter to my 2 young sons just in case something happened to me. I know that it sounds a little melodramatic now, but in that moment, I wanted to make every word count. I told my boys there were only 2 things I wanted for them. I hope that they be productive and that they be kind. Because if you're productive and love what you do, you'll be happy. And if you're kind, you'll make other people happy. It really is just that simple. My next story takes place in downtown Houston. I was walking with my sons through a busy intersection holding their hands. Even though we were in a clearly marked crosswalk, a truck sped through the intersection, passing less than a foot in front of us. I was mad, so I slapped the back of the truck as it buzzed by. Bad move. Well, the truck pulled over, and a big guy got out of the vehicle, then strode towards us in an unfriendly manner. So I did what seemed like the smart thing to do. I ran. My sons caught up with me and joined me in my hiding spot. They joined me in my hiding spot in some nearby bushes. And after the danger had passed, I looked my sons in the eyes and gave them this important advice. Never, ever slap the back of some guy's truck in Houston. Now, my wife told me that if I was planning on telling that story, that I needed to tie it in with the overall theme of my speech. Unfortunately, I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do that, or even how to come up with a theme in the first place. But I felt like it was important to squeeze it in anyway because the lesson seemed too important not to share. Now is the moment in the speech where it's my job to dispense a key piece of advice, a pearl of wisdom that will stick with you for years to come. But if you don't mind, I'd rather talk about my dog. His name is Thunder. He's a Portuguese water dog, the same kind that President Obama's family had in the White House. A Portuguese, are you cheering for the dog or Obama? I can't tell. A Portuguese water dog is a working dog. That means Thunder and his kind were bred over centuries to perform a very specific task. And that task was to carry messages from one fishing boat to another off the coast of Portugal. When a Portuguese water dog is doggy paddling in the Atlantic Ocean with a rolled up piece of paper in its mouth, it's as happy as can be. Even if it's a similar activity, like say, retrieving a tennis ball from a backyard swimming pool, a dog like Thunder is content. But the reverse is true for when Thunder is not doing what he was bred to do. If Thunder is left at home for too long or hasn't had a dip in a lake or a pool for a while, he's a miserable wreck. In those times, it seems his life lacks purpose. I believe it's the same way with people. When we're doing what we're meant to be doing, we feel fulfilled. The paradox of a liberal arts education is that it opens multiple career pathways, and even the smartest people aren't always great at picking the path that's right for them. So I challenge you to try to truly understand yourself and to figure out what kind of work really brings you joy. Don't waste your time on pursuits that don't feel fulfilling, even if you've just spent 4 years pursuing them. Trust your gut, because the sooner you figure out what kind of dog you are, the quicker you can figure out what types of waters you should be swimming in. Of course, I'm not suggesting you actually become a dog or even do dog-like things. I'll admit that the metaphor is a little tortured, and the truth is I'm still working on it. Recently, I've had the opportunity to work on a musical, which has been education for me. I've learned that the third song in a musical is usually the main character's I want song. The character sings about their hopes and dreams, which frames the whole rest of the story. For example, in The Little Mermaid, Ariel tells us she wants to be part of your world and live on land where the people are. In Hamilton, a young Alexander tells us he's not going to throw away his shot. So, if they were making a musical about your life, what would the title of the third song be? Please feel free to discuss this with your grandparents over brunch. Since I'm a writer, I figure I should give you a piece of advice that's specific to my craft. For any aspiring scribes out there, please pay attention, because what I'm about to tell you is pure gold. If you want the kind of success I've had, all you need to do is come up with one good idea. Then just repeat it over and over and over again. And don't forget to pre-order Diary of a Wimpy Kid 17, which comes out this fall. I'm sure that I've missed the opportunity to impart a more meaningful message to you today. Part of that's just poor planning, and that's on me. But part of it is because at 51 years old, I feel like I'm just starting to figure things out. In fact, I'm much more interested in what I can learn from you than what you can learn from me. Because the truth is, I've learned so much from you already. We all have. You've taught us that in this country, racial inequality is systemic, and that it's high time for us to address it with honesty and integrity. You've educated us on the complexity of gender identity. You've helped destigmatize the active pursuit of taking care of our mental health. You've taken my generation to task for not always living up to our ideals. You've taught us that nothing matters more than the protection of our planet. And finally, you've taught us that creating a TikTok account at our age is cringy AF, whatever that means. You're graduating at a time when there's a determined effort by political forces to ban books in school libraries across the country. This week, I joined with more than 1,000 fellow authors and illustrators to sign a letter that was read before Congress. The words in the letter aren't mine. They were written by Christina Soontornvat, who expertly summed up the state of affairs. She writes, "When books are removed or flagged as inappropriate, it sends a message that the people in them are somehow inappropriate. It is a dehumanizing form of erasure. Every reader deserves to see themselves and their families positively represented in the books in their schools. These books are important for all children. Reading stories that reflect the diversity of our world builds empathy and respect for everyone's humanity. At a time when our country is experiencing an alarming rise in hate crimes, we should be searching for ways to increase empathy and compassion at every turn." I couldn't agree more. The protagonist of my series is a cartoon character named Greg Heffley, and you may have noticed that Greg is no hero. But that's okay, because there are plenty of heroes in the entertainment we consume. In fact, you've grown up in an era where there seems to be a bottomless appetite for superhero movies. So what does that say about the times we're living in? I think it says the world is crying out for heroes. And not just superheroes, but people who simply do the right thing. It's easy to be cynical when so many of our elected leaders act not in the interests of the people they represent, but in the naked aim of furthering their own power. Integrity and courage are easy to spot because they're such rare qualities. Maybe the last 4 years of have been your superhero origin story. The world you're stepping into is full of challenges that are much more serious and urgent than the challenges my generation faced at your age. The question of whether or not we can preserve our democracy isn't a hyperbolic one. We're living through difficult times, but your experiences at the University of Maryland have armed you for the righteous battles ahead. You've certainly faced your share of challenges already. When the global pandemic struck in March of 2020, your parents grieved for you. We all did. We grieved because we knew the time you were losing was time you couldn't get back. For us adults, 2 years is just a passing blip. But 2 years of what should have been the best time in your lives were cruelly docked from your college experience. You'd be right to feel that it's just not fair. But you surprised us. You didn't wallow in self-pity. You learned how to attend classes without even getting out of bed. You played a lot of Fortnite. You ate all of our snacks. You taught us a lot about resiliency. You made us so incredibly proud. Speaking of pride, I couldn't be more proud than to be standing here today addressing my fellow Terps. This place helped make me who I am, and I'm sure it's helped shape you as well. There are hundreds of colleges across the country holding commencement ceremonies today, but none are quite like the University of Maryland. There's something different about this place. There's something different about this place, something that's powerful and dynamic and vital. We're ambitious and we're passionate, and yes, we're totally fearless. Those other universities can have their stone archways and stuffy traditions and puffed up pedigree, but I'll take a statue of Jim Henson and Kermit the Frog on my campus any day of the week. Which wraps up my first and likely last commencement address. I don't have high hopes that you'll remember much about what was said here today, because I know that when you think back on your graduation, here's what you'll remember. Man, it was hot. But I'm hoping in the passage of time, a deeper message has penetrated your minds and perhaps your hearts as well. There's just one thing I hope you'll carry with you as you go forward on life's journey. It's this: never, ever slap the back of some guy's truck in Houston. Thank you again for this amazing honor, and congratulations to the class of 2021 and 2022. Go Terps! All right, this one's
distinguished guest, please welcome to the stage the Dean for the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Dr. Craig Bayrudy.
All right, this is for the fans. Zoo-wee mama!